Yep, that bad. Let's review Madam Web. Madam Web stars Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, Adam Scott, and is directed by S.J. Clarkson. What's up, guys? Time for a brand new 2024 review. Oh my God, guys, Let me just start off by saying I'm the optimistic type of guy going into this. I love Spider-Man, and I'm not gonna lie, I was curious, very curious about this movie. There was something about the trailer that had me a little interested. Even though the trailer wasn't doing any favors for itself, I think a lot of the problems that were in the trailer, hoping that maybe it's a context type thing and the movie actually might be pretty decent, because that has happened before. But no, it's even worse than you probably think it is. It's kind of sad. So let's get into this review. First off, let me give you a quick plot synopsis. Time frame wise, this movie's weird because it opens up in 1973, year I was born, by the way. And we get to see our main character, Cassandra Webb's mother, and she's researching this spider because it has these like healing properties and whatever, but there's also this very superficial bad guy with the personality of a turnip, and he wants to get the spider from her because his goals are a little bit more selfish in nature, a lot more selfish. She happens to be pregnant, and let me just say without going into any spoilers, her pregnancy, the spider affects that pregnancy, and of course our main character, Cassandra, has these unique like premonition type powers, obviously because she was infected by the spider before she was even born. Sounds like an interesting plot, right? So then we fast forward to 2003 for some reason, and that's where this movie takes place. We have a young Uncle Ben. Doesn't really mention Aunt May, although there's a sort of a hint of it. But we do see Peter Parker's mother. She's pregnant with Peter. I might have given you too much, but who cares? Because this movie is absolutely horrible, and that's something that's established in the first act of the movie. But our main goal of this movie, our main character Cassandra, she has to intercept these three other characters, Julia, Anya, and Maddie. And I'm not gonna lie, I had to look that up on Internet Movie Database because that's one of the problems of this movie is these characters are so paper thin and superficial that you can't possibly remember who they are because they're just not built up at all. But let's just say our bad guy Ezekiel is hunting them down. He needs to kill them, otherwise it's going to be bad juju for him in the future. And so Cassandra's learning her powers throughout the movie. She doesn't realize the powers that she has and how great they could become, and this movie does explore that just a little bit. But yeah, that's it. I'm going to start you off with some of the good in this movie. I'd say the very final act, even though it's really horrible itself, you do get to see a little bit of promise into what maybe they intended this movie to be when she does eventually realize what her powers are. And it doesn't play out the way I think it should have. And it gets really silly, especially like in the last scene of the movie. Also, from a directing standpoint, I think there are some cool shots in this movie, especially the premonition scenes, some nice editing choices along the way. There were a couple of times I was like, oh, if they could just keep this up, what they're doing right here, this isn't too bad, but they're totally failing in the storytelling department. That's about all I can give you as far as the good in this movie. It looks nice, but now let's just jump into the cons. Holy crap. Just to start off on, I guess on a superficial note, the acting in this movie is completely wooden. You could tell that every single actor in this movie, maybe people behind the scenes, they're just trying to get through this mess. There's no like heart, no ambition, and you have very capable actors. Dakota Johnson, I think she does the best she can with this part, with what's given to her. But even she doesn't do anything to write home about. And I'd say if you have a spectrum of acting in this movie, it goes from completely horrible, almost as if they're just reading off the script. And the best you might get is just, I guess, passable TV show type acting. As a matter of fact, this whole movie feels like it could be just a bad TV episode of something that's just forgotten in time. The second big issue with this is the script. It's just a really bad script. There's no depth to it whatsoever. The three young women that Cassandra has to intercept and ultimately save throughout this movie, they're just kind of thrown together. And I can tell you there are some really stupid scenes in this. Like there's a scene where You know, she's on the subway and she's trying to save them from Ezekiel. And then she gets them to the woods, pretty much kidnaps them. And then when she gets them to the woods, she says, hey, I need you to stay here for 3 hours so I can go research this Ezekiel guy and what's going on. And can you just stay here for me, please? Yeah, that literally happens in this movie. Can you imagine if you're kidnapped by somebody and then they just leave you there in the woods and then you just leave them? It's just the stupidest story decision I think I've ever seen. And it shocks me that a studio or producers or whoever had to watch this thing and they were like, oh, this is great. Let's go ahead and put this out. I can see now why they didn't have any faith in this movie whatsoever, why the embargo was the day before the movie. Because the writing decisions in this are laughable. Now, you know, in the trailer, it looks like you got some web slingers. Ezekiel, our main bad guy. I'd say the best of what you see of him as far as action-wise is in the trailer. He only just bounces from place to place. He doesn't even have like web slinging abilities or anything like that. It's almost like Spider-Man without 90% of his powers. Setting that aside, just the character himself, this guy, horrible acting. Like has no depth of character, no ambition with the part. I really couldn't understand who this guy was. There's just nothing interesting on the surface there. Probably one of the most forgettable, like even more forgettable than the villain in Morbius. I'd say this movie may be just a little bit better than Morbius because Morbius is just absolutely horrible, but it's right there on that level. It's bad, it's really bad. I think this is even worse than say like the worst of the MCU, like the Marvels. At least the Marvels had a couple of fun moments in it, but this was pretty painful to get through. And before you go, let me give you something that's a little bit spoilery, because I think most of you aren't even going to waste your time with this movie, okay? You know those 3 girls that are in the movie, like Sydney Sweeney and the other 2? And they're supposed to be superheroes in their own right? Forget about that. That is pretty much what the villain sees in the future. But this whole movie doesn't build to them becoming that at all. It's a complete wasted concept. So I don't want to waste any more of your time on this one. Wow, and I went into this with the best of intentions. I wanted to like this movie so bad. I love when a movie comes out and everybody thinks it's going to be a stinker, but it turns out to be quite good, and this was not the case whatsoever. Giving this a 2 hours lost for sure. It's almost a looped in hell. I hope some of you guys found some enjoyment out of this. Let me know down in the comments. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day on Fridays. Rudy FIFA Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. You know, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Drumdum out.